friends, welcome to the 232nd Legal Empowerment Through Interaction lecture series. Today, we have our good old friend, family member, Anil Malhotra sir. He is in a revised new edition with a new spine and a new knee, in the sense like he underwent 2 surgeries, and except for the surgery, everything else is okay, in the sense like his spirits are really high. We have been interacting with him prior to this session, and today's topic is putting the cart before the horse, a flawed amendment of adoption laws, knee-jerk reactions, and a way in which legislations are promulgated or made nowadays at times leaves a lot to be thought of, and it is more or less like a symptomatic treatment nowadays, instead of having a holistic view of the entire thing. I'm sure that we'll be touching upon different nuances of the changes that has been brought about in the adoption laws on account of the new amendment. Today, we are privileged with the presence of Justice B. Ramkumar sir, Justice Ramakrishnan sir, Justice Dr. Meena V. Gomber ma'am. We are also having all our family members in this journey of discovery, enlightenment, and exchange of ideas. So, without wasting any time, may I request Anil Malhotra sir to present the topic.
Thank you very much. So nice of you. Distinguished participants and very, very dear friends and listeners. This, whilst I was recuperating from my surgical sojourn, so to say, I discovered to my shock that the bill which sought to bring in district magistrates in place of courts had gone through both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. Now, to put it in my own words, a very short view of what has happened. The entire process of approval of adoptions before the formal adoption process is finalized and NOC is granted by the Central Adoption Resource Authority to enable a child to leave India or to stay within India, has been shifted from a judicial court to a district magistrate or an executive officer. Is this right or is this wrong? In my view, I would advocate and perceive this to be as a very major blow to the entire perspective of adoptions, which has a turbulent history in terms of a law evolved through the Supreme Court. Now, to go back to the background, 12 million plus orphan children wait to find homes. The orphan, abandoned and surrendered children, the most vulnerable at risk, were often victims of rackets, of exploitation, of being sold abroad, of being exploited sexually, of being abused morally, physically, and used crimes. So, Supreme Court, in 3 successive decisions, Lakshmikant Pandey 1, 2, and 3. First is 1984 Supreme Court 469, 1984 Supreme Court 469. Second is 1986 Supreme Court 272. These are both AIRs. And third is 1987 1 SCC 66. Now the Supreme Court kept on pursuing this matter, asking the government that you have to come out with a streamlined judicial mechanism to prevent the exploitation of children, to prevent the trafficking of children, to prevent the abuse of children. So as a result of the 1984, 86 and 87 amendments, the Juvenile Justice Act of 1986 was christened as the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. And since I will come to that a little later, but as an introduction here, Uh, by then, India had signed the United Convention, United Convention on the UNCRC, that is United Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the 1993 Adoption Convention. So per se, India had to follow an international mechanism of compliance of international standards of adoptions, because signing the Convention on Adoptions, whose full name was Convention on Protection of Children, Convention on Protection of Children and Cooperation in respect of inter-country adoptions, and Cooperation in respect of inter-country adoptions 1993. Now, under the 1993 Convention, India per se was statutorily required to make statutory amendments in Indian law, which found implementation in the JJ Act of 2015, and which required India to create a mechanism to have a regulated procedure of adoptions, both in country and both intra country. Now, before we go to that, uh, a brand new chapter, Chapter 8, was carved out insofar as adoptions is concerned in the JJ Act 2015. The entire adoption process was streamlined. CARA, Central Adoption Resource Agency, became or was rechristened as Central Adoption Resource Authority, which means it became a statutory authority. Why did it become a statutory authority? Because the 1993 Adoption Convention requires creation of an authority, and the purpose of this authority, the requirement, the function of this authority is to interact with authorities of similar nature all over the world. So the process of adoption results after one authority in one country processes the request, sends it to the other. Likewise, when the child has to go, the authority of the country from where the child has to go issues an NOC and the child goes out. So this streamlined process was set up, and in the ultimate end, because the court required a mandate, court mandate was required because of the Supreme Court judgment and because of the requirements of the convention, a court order was a must for the judge or a man trained with a judicial mind to judge and adjudicate welfare of the child, to adjudicate child was not being exploited, to ascertain that no money had changed hands, and to sniff out anything which was wrong. So ultimately, what was the judge? The judge was a microscope to look into the entire process and certify, yes, this adoption is valid, can go through. So this entire exercise, extending over 30 years of the mechanism being overseen by the court, because it is an ingrained part of the process of Indian judicial ethos that every adoption, guardianship, custody should go to a court. The court order was a must, a mandate to go through. So something which was evolved by a conscious jurisprudence by the Supreme Court has in one stroke, by the Juvenile Justice Care of Protection and Children Amendment Act 2021, been swept away. And wherever the word court exists, wherever the word in the court exists, wherever the word court order exists, wherever the word concerned courts exist, district magistrate has been substituted. Before the district magistrate, order passed by the district magistrate, concerned court, district magistrate. So the court has been replaced by a district magistrate. Now, very surprisingly, the definition of the word court has been left untouched. I don't know how this has been done. So first of all, what is the definition of the word court in the JJ Act of 2015 and which still stands? So court means a civil court and which has jurisdiction in matters of adoption and guardianship. So it is not just adoption, it is guardianship also, and may include the district court, family court, and city civil courts. Now, the first anomaly which has come in is that you may have substituted the word district magistrate for the word court insofar adoptions is concerned, but by leaving the definition of the word court in matters of adoption and guardianship, you have left guardianship alone, and you have still, so to say, left the court meaning intact. So by not amending the definition of the word court or deleting it from the JJ Act, you have done a piecemeal amendment and you have murdered the provision. You have murdered half the act. So the definition of the word court to mean a civil court having jurisdiction in matters of adoption and guardianship is intact. But in the substantive provisions, you have changed word court to district magistrate. Now, how this is going to be read or how is this going to be interpreted is going to be something very strange. So you want to retain the meaning of the word court as the authority to have jurisdiction in matters of adoption and guardianship intact. But then when it comes to endorsing, approving, certifying an order of adoption, you replace it with the district magistrate. So this is one biggest fundamental flaw in the amendment. Now, what they have done in 26 in the definition clause in section, they have added section 26A to say district magistrate includes additional district magistrate. That's all. Then what has been done in chapter 8, sections 56 to 61, which are the provisions for adoption, then a procedure for adoption by Indian parents, by Indian prospective adoptive parents living in India, then procedure for inter-country adoptions of orphan, abandoned or surrendered child, then procedure for inter-country relative adoption, then court procedure, then effect of adoption, then reporting of adoption. They have substituted the word court for a district magistrate. So the effect of this has been, now what is the justification in the act? The way I have tried to understand it, the statement of object and reason says it takes too long for judicial courts to decide. Then there should be a healthy interaction between the administration and the adoptive agencies. So these are two reasons which have been spelled out for amending the act. And I think that no discussion took place in the Rajya Sabha, because in the last week of July when this bill was passed, Parliament was under boycott. So this bill probably sailed through in Rajya Sabha without any discussion. So this is in sum and substance the fallacy, so to say, in a nutshell. Now, there is another provision they have added. They have added section 101, subsection 6 and 7. They say that any person who is aggrieved by adoption order passed by the district magistrate, he can appeal before the divisional commissioner, and he has to decide it within 4 weeks. So the second part of it, whereby the appeal would lie, ordinarily speaking, to the High Court, the power has been given to the commissioner. So this means 226 and 227 in a way have been, so to say, diluted or in a way abrogated. Now, before we move on, I think the people who drafted this amendment completely overlooked the basic principle of Article 50 of the Constitution, whereby there is a clear mandate of separation of the judiciary from the executive. Now, there is 50 says that the state shall take steps to separate the judiciary from the executive in the public services of the state. So this mandate of the Constitution was the fulcrum of the 41st report of the Law Commission of India in 1969. Now, the Law Commission's report ultimately led to the amendment of the CRPC of 1898, and 1973 CRPC came, dividing the criminal and the criminal courts, and a lot of changes took place. So 41st report of the Law Commission basically suggested separation of the judiciary from the executive. It talked of creating judicial magistrates to be appointed by the High Court for judicial functions, executive magistrate to be appointed by the state government to exercise executive systems. And this was said to be put in these words were, I'm going to read out, it said, one of the main recommendations of the Law Commission was to provide the separation of the judiciary from the executive on an all-India basis to ensure improvement in the quality and speed of all judicial magistrates who would be legally qualified and trained persons within the control and under the different high courts, and to further do away with the arbitrary exercise of power and to dispense with the discretionary powers taken in view of the provisions of Article 50, and to provide for separation of judiciary from the executive. So 41st report of the Law Commission basically suggested that judicial magistrates shall be appointed by the High Court at such places as the state government may, in consultation with the High Courts, notify in the official gazette, as is the process. And special magistrates who may possess special qualifications may be appointed. Likewise, Law Commission recommended that executive magistrates should be appointed to exercise executive functions. So basically, there was a clear-cut separation of powers as contemplated by Article 50 of the Constitution, and it meant that judicial powers should not be exercised by executive magistrates. And I think this is where the JJ Act has been rendered a toothless, so to say, tiger by taking away the enormity of the importance of what the judicial mind is supposed to do. Now, what also seems to have gone astray is the amendments, the provisions of the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act. Now, in the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, in section 9, persons capable of giving in adoption have been identified. So section 9 of Hamma. Now, we all know that adoptions under Hamma are irreversible, require no formal deed, though a written deed always helps, and giving and taking is the essential ceremony. So section 9 of Hamma basically says that no person except the father or the mother or the guardian of the child shall have the capacity to give in adoption. Now, section 9 subsection 4 says that where both the father and mother are dead, or have completely renounced the world, or have abandoned the child, or have been declared by a court of competent jurisdiction to be unsound mind, or where the child's parentage is not known, the guardian of the child may give the child in adoption with the previous permission of the court to any person, including the guardian himself. So where the parent is missing, the court, that is the court of the guardian judge, is the one, sorry, the court of the civil court is the one which has the power to do so. Now, court in this perspective has been defined to mean in section 9, subsection 5, 1I. First, it says who is a guardian. Guardian means a person having the care of a person. Then a guardian is a guardian also appointed or declared by a court. Now, what is court? Court is defined as means a city civil court or a district court, or within the local limits of whose jurisdiction the child to be adopted ordinarily resides. So, what is the meaning and import of this section? The section means essentially that if the parent is not available, then the court will become the guardian, or the court has to be appointed the guardian, and the court has to take the call whether the child can be given adoption or not. And the purpose of this is very clear, that the court, as parents portray, steps into the shoes of the parent and becomes the parent of the child. And the judicial training, the judicial mind, and the insight of the court by which the court is trained in it, and it is attributed to the court that it has the intelligence, it has the legal capacity, and it has the sense to judge the best welfare of the child. Now, the definition of the court here, which I had seen in the case of the Tibetan child, is the civil court. Now, civil court is not the family court, because in such a circumstance, power has been specifically given to the city civil court, and it is a designated court of the power being exercised in such regard. So then also, it's further in section 9, it is said that before granting permission to a guardian under subsection 4, the court shall be satisfied. Now, this is very important, that the adoption will be for the welfare of the child, due consideration being for this purpose for the wishes of the child with regard to the age, understanding of the child, and the applicant the applicant for permission has not received or agreed to receive, and that no person has made or agreed to make or given the applicant any payment or reward in consideration of the adoption, except such as the court may sanction. So what was the court supposed to do? Court was supposed to check the welfare. Court was supposed to check any malpractice. Court was supposed to oversee any financial transaction, and court was supposed to see that there is no unethical purpose in the entire transaction. Now, one very important factor is that this is for an orphan, abandoned, and surrendered child, because it is the replacement of the parent that the court is coming with. But as we just saw, when it comes to adoption of orphan, abandoned, and surrendered children under the JJ Act, the court has been replaced by a district magistrate. But under Hama, the district magistrate is nowhere. It is still the court. And under the JJ Act, the power for guardianship and adoption, as I earlier told you, is still with the court. So this is the biggest, so to say, anomaly in these terms. And I think this is where, seriously speaking, the process has been faltered, the entire process has been subjugated, and the left hand does not seem to really be knowing what the right hand is doing. So this is as far as the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act is concerned. Now, similar is the provision in the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956. Now, we have seen that the definition of court is the court of adoption or guardianship. So we also see what is the position regarding the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act. Now, first of all, we come to the definition in section 4B. Who is a guardian? Who is a guardian? Guardian means a natural guardian or a guardian appointed and declared by a court. Again, the word is court. Then section 8 talks of powers of a natural guardian. Now, in section 8(5), it says the Guardian and Wards Act 1890 shall apply to and in respect of an application for obtaining permission of the court under subsection 2 in respect of it, as if it were an application for obtaining permission under so and so. And the definition of court in the word, in the definition in section 8, subsection 5, subsection 6 is court means city civil court or a district court or a court empowered under section 4A of the Guardian and Wards Act 1890. And section 2 of the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act says the provisions of this act shall be in addition to and not save as hereinafter expressly provided in derogation of the Guardian and Wards Act 1890. Now, this is because under the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, there is no enabling provision to go to a court. The provision is in the Guardian and Wards Act. So you have to invoke the GWA with the HMGA to file a petition. So here we see that again, the authority is the court. And what is the court supposed to do before appointing a guardian? Section 13, in the appointment of or declaration of any person as a guardian, the court, by a court, the welfare of the minor shall be the paramount consideration. So again, the judicial microscope is with the court. Now, this brings us to the Guardian and Wards Act 1890, because here they say, what is the meaning of court? Go to section 4 of the Guardian and Wards Act. Now, section 4 definition clause of the Guardian and Wards Act first is talking about district court. It defines district court. District court has the meaning assigned to that expression in the Code of Civil Procedure and includes a high court in the exercise of its original jurisdiction. And court means the district court having jurisdiction to entertain an application for appointment or declaring a person as a guardian. Now, very interestingly, this also makes us travel to the Code of Civil Procedure, because the Code of Civil Procedure in section 2, subsection 4 says it defines district. But district means the local limits of the jurisdiction of a principal civil court of original jurisdiction, hereinafter called the district court, and includes the local limits of an ordinary original civil jurisdiction of a high court. So what is happening everywhere? Everywhere the word court is a judicial court, one way or the other. And rightly so, because everything vests as far as the judicial court is concerned. Now, 4A of the Guardian and Wards Act says power to confer jurisdiction on judicial courts, judicial officers and proceedings. High Court may, by general or special order, empower any officer exercising original jurisdiction subordinate to a district court, or authorize a judge of any district court to empower him to subordinate to him to dispose of any proceeding under this act. So what happens under the Guardian and Wards Act? Either the High Court designates a guardian judge, or it leaves it open to the district judge to nominate a judge to be the guardian judge in that district. Then under section 7, the power of the court to make an order of guardianship. So it's section 9 says where the court is satisfied that it is for the welfare of a child, it can appoint a guardian. Again, the word court is a judicial court. Then section 9, power to entertain application. If the application is with regard to the guardianship of a minor, it shall be made to the district court having jurisdiction. So again, we go back to 4A and it goes to the district court. So all this again boils down to courts all over. So all this nomenclature has been untouched. So now with this, we go to the we go to the Family Courts Act 1984. Now, in the Family Courts Act of 1984, the provisions of Section 2D define a family court. Family court means a family court established under Section 3. And Section 3 talks of establishment of family courts as notified by the government. Now, Section 7 and 8 are very important because they take away the jurisdiction of the guardian judge to become a family court. Now, Section 7 says, subject to the provisions of this Act, a family court shall have and exercise all the jurisdiction exercisable by any district court or subordinate civil court under any law for the timing in force in respect of the suits or proceeding and for matters and of the nature referred to in the explanation. So what has happened? The district court, including the High Court and exercise of civil jurisdiction, have become the family court. And the district court will be the authority which is going to shift to the family court. Now, insofar, what is this going to be? This is going to be for all the 7 subjects in the explanation. So A is suit or proceeding for nullity of marriage, B is suit or proceeding for validity of marriage, C is suit or proceeding for disposal of property, then D is suit for injunction, then E is suit for legitimacy, F is proceeding for maintenance, and then F is a suit or proceeding in relation to guardianship of the person or custody or of access to any minor. So all this power vested with the district court has gone to the family court. Then Section 8 talks of exclusion of jurisdiction. It says where a family court has been excised for any area, no district court or any subordinate civil court referred to in subsection 1 or section 7 shall in relation to such area or having any jurisdiction in regard to any explanation will cease to have jurisdiction. So there is a bar of jurisdiction that the district court shall not take cognizance and it will go to the family court. So the procedure generally in section 10 says that every court, family court shall abide by the procedure laid down in the CPC, though the family court will be free to enjoin its own procedure. Now, taking all this in view, the unilateral amendment of Chapter 8 dealing with adoptions in a limited way to replace the word district court is in controversy with the amendment, with the definition of the word court itself in the JJ Act, and is also in infringement of the statutory mandate laid down in HAMA, HMGA, GWA, Family Courts Act, and the CPC. So this is a clear violation of the statute. So what is in effect, that is happening? In matters of adoption, in matters of guardianship, in matters of custody, be it orphan, abandoned, surrendered children or other children, in all other enactments, the endorsement, the approval is by a judicial court. But under the JJ Act, which is a secular law for which you have an option, it is with the district magistrate. Can you, for the same purposes of adoption under different statutes, have different endorsing, approving, or certifying authorities? In my humble view, the answer is no. Now, where does this amendment also fall foul? I think it falls foul of the preamble of the 2015 amendment itself. Now let us see when they amended the JJ Act in 2015, as I told you earlier, the purpose was to bring it in parity with the UNCRC, United Nations Convention on the Right of Child, and the 1993 Adoption Convention. So what was the preamble of the amendment? It says 2015 preamble, an act to consolidate and amend the law relating to children alleged and found to be in conflict with law and children in need of care and protection by catering to their basic needs through a proper care, protection, development, treatment, social integration by adopting a child-friendly approach in the adjudication and disposal of matters in the best interest of children and for their rehabilitation through processes provided and institutional bodies established hereinafter and for matters connected therewith. Now, the word adjudication, to my mind, means a judicial decision-making process. So, the very amendment of 2021 falls foul of the word in the preamble, that is adjudication. A district magistrate or executive authority will not do adjudication. He will only stamp it. You will have an agent, like any quota, license, permit, or permission. A routine order will go, a clerk will put up a file, he will say this, tick mark in the box, clear. Anyway, coming back to the purpose, the statement on the object of reasons, it says, and whereas the government of India has acceded on the 11th of December 1992 to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, adopted by the Central Assembly of the United Nations, which has prescribed a set of standards to be adhered to by all state parties in securing the best interest of the child. And whereas it is expedient to reenact the JJ Act 2000 to make comprehensive provisions for children found to be in conflict and children in need of care and protection, taking into consideration prescribed in the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the United Nations Minimum Rules for Administration of Juvenile Rules, so and so, the Hague Convention on Protection of Children and Cooperation in respect of inter-country adoption and other related instruments. So the Hague Convention on Protection of Children in respect of inter-country adoptions was a major contributing factor in the judicial mechanism of an adoption process. So they also say the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by India on 11 December 1992, requires the state parties to undertake all appropriate measures in case of a child accused or violating penal law, including treatment of the child in a manner considered with the protection of the child's dignity, worth, reinforcing the child's respect with fundamental freedoms, taking into consideration the age and desirability of promoting the child's reintegration into the child, assuming a constructive role in the society. Now, then they also said that this process of legislation will ensure proper care, protection, development, and social reintegration of the child in conflict with law and children needing homes. And the best interest of the child, now this is very important, Section 2, subsection 9 is the only statute defining best interest of the child. It means best interest of the child means the basis for any decision taken regarding the child to ensure fulfillment of his basic rights and needs, identity, social well-being, and physical, emotional, and intellectual development. I pause. I ask a question to myself. Can a district magistrate address these questions? Does he have the training, intellect, capacity, wisdom, thought process, time, inclination, energy, or a thought process to determine the best interest of the child? The answer is no. He is a man who is trained to look into executive decisions. He's a man trained to just fill in the blanks. He is not a man trained to go into another mind, to read a mind, to judge a mind and come to an independent decision. He is not trained to think out of the box. He is trained to think in the box. So I think the very purpose of the 2015 amendment has been, so to say, murdered. I use a very strong word by this 2021 amendment. Now I say so because if we travel to the conventions which India has signed, we find that this is where India has erred. So if we see the UNCRC and we read what does the UNCRC require, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child was meant to ensure the basic right of the child. It said, convinced that the family is the fundamental group of society and the natural environment for the growth and well-being of all members and particularly children, should be afforded the necessary protection and assistance so that it can fully assume its responsibilities in the community. Recognizing that the child, for the full and harmonious development of his or her personality, should grow up in a family environment in an atmosphere of love, happiness, and understanding. Bearing in mind that the declaration that a child by reason of physical and mental immaturity needs special safeguards for care and appropriate legal protection before being or after birth, taking due importance of the cultural values and traditions, recognizing that every international cooperation among countries and so on so. So basically, it was meant to ensure that there is appropriate legal protection for a child to be given its benefits. In Article 3 said, in actions concerning children, whether undertaken by public or private social welfare institutions, courts of law, administrative authorities or legislative bodies, the best interest of the child shall be a paramount consideration. Article 6 says, every child has an inherent right to life. So a right of adoption is a right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. And in my view, Article 21 is violated when you are passing on the function of adjudication of a child's right to adoption into the hands of a magistrate who has no capacity legally to judge his right to life and right to be adopted or right to be given an adoption. Then most important, the right guaranteed under Article 21, which I think is violated. Article 21 of the UNCRC says, state parties must recognize and permit the system of adoption to ensure that the best interest of the child shall be the paramount consideration, and they shall ensure that the adoption of a child is authorized only by competent authorities and determine in accordance with applicable law. I pause. Applicable law, which is the applicable law for adoption and guardianship, even as per Section 2, subsection 23 of the JJ Act. It is the court, because the definition is court means a civil court which has jurisdiction in matters of adoption and guardianship. So simply by changing in Chapter 8, adoption, the word court with district magistrate, you have not taken away the jurisdiction of the court. You have only done a lip service by changing the approving authority. But you have not displaced the power of the court or the jurisdiction of the court to have the final say or official endorsement in matters of adoption and guardianship. So you have kept the purpose of the UNCRC intact by saying applicable law and procedures and the basis of all pertinent and relevant information that adoption is permissible. So applicable law for adoption is permissible will go back to 223, quote, in view of the child's status concerning parents, relatives, legal guardians, and if required, the persons concerned have given their informed consent to the adoption on the basis of such counseling as may be. So first flaw we read was that there is an inconsistency in the definition of the word adoption. Quote, Then we found that there is an inconsistency in the preamble. Then we step down to the UNCRC. Now we also see that the similar infringement has happened in the Convention on Protection of Children and Cooperation in respect of inter-country adoptions. Now, the Adoption Convention in the preamble says, convinced of the necessity to take measures to ensure that inter-country adoptions are made in the best interest of the child with respect to his or her fundamental rights and to prevent abduction, sale or traffic of children. Can a district magistrate ensure these? Doubtful. Objects of the convention are Article 1, to establish safeguards to ensure that inter-country adoptions take place in the best interest of the child and with respect for his or her fundamental rights as recognized in international law. To establish a system of cooperation amongst contracting states to ensure that it develops a safeguard with respect to and preventing abduction, sale and trafficking of children. So this is Article 1. Then we come to Article 4. Article 4 says an adoption within the scope of the convention shall take place only if the competent authorities of the state of origin certify. Now, there are two words used in the Adoption Convention. One is competent authority and the other is central authority. I have bifurcated these to mean, when we talk of central authority, it means CARA. When it talks of competent authority, in my view, it means court. So I would think that the competent authority word here is imported or meaning court. And then Article 5, an adoption within the scope of the convention shall take place only if the competent authorities of the receiving state, again competent authority. Then in Article, so this is Article 1, 4 and 5. Now, Article 23 and Article 28 are exemptions and recognitions. Now, just to fill you in, under Section 56 of the Juvenile Justice Act, 56.3 says, now 56 says basically that every adoption shall be approved by the authority, that is the CARA, and every authority will be approved by a valid order of the court. Now, the court has been substituted to mean a district magistrate. But Section 56.4 also says that all inter-country adoptions, 56.3, nothing in this act shall apply to adoption of children made under the provisions of HAMA. So HAMA adoptions have been left out. JJ Act says if you do adoption under HAMA, then you don't have to follow the procedure under the JJ Act. Now the question is, Article 28 and Article 23 and 28. Now, the problem is that when you have to take a child outside India, unless there is a CARA NOC, no embassy of any country will give you a visa for the child to leave, because a CARA approval is necessary. Now, the question has come in various decisions that if it is an adoption under a domestic law, what should CARA do? Two decisions of our courts have said CARA should issue a conformity certificate or an exemption. Now, where is this exemption and conformity certificate coming from? I think it comes from 23 and 28. So first we will look at what 23 says. Now, Article 23 of the Adoption Convention says that the central authorities, Article 18 and 23. The central authorities of both states shall take necessary steps to obtain permission of the child to leave the state of origin and enter and reside permanently in the receiving state. Then Article 23. And adoption certified by the competent authority of the state of adoption as having been made in accordance with the convention shall be recognized by operation of law in other contracting states. And then Article 28. The convention does not affect any law of a state of origin which requires the adoption of a child habitually resident with the state, taking place in the state which prohibits a child's placement or transfer in the receiving state prior to adoption. So let us suppose there is a orphan, abandoned or a surrendered child under Hama and there is a court approval. So that would be exempt. But here we find the court is the district magistrate. So this is again left and right not meeting. So now I find that all this put together, in my view, has displaced, has done away with one, what the Supreme Court did in 30 years with Lakshmikant Pandey 1, 2, 3, what the JJ Act did in 2015, and 3, it has undone Hama, HMGA, GWA, and the Family Courts Act. So this amendment, which probably was not discussed in Parliament, I think is very harmful. So what will happen? You have gone through the procedures. Till now, there has been no judicial scrutiny. There has been no judicial adjudication. There has been no examination. The promoters of this view of simplifying process say there is no list. This is not an adversary litigation. It is the adoptive parents and the parents giving an adoption and an adoption agency. So therefore, the procedure should be simplified. Therefore, district magistrate. Now here, I think where there is no list, where there are only authorities, the chance of abuse is more. The chance of trafficking, sale, and malpractice is more. You will find organized rackets, all kinds of middlemen, bargainers, touts who hang around offices of the deputy commissioner or district magistrate, and those bevy of typists. They will be drafting documents. There will be a man who will, for 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, getting you an adoption of it. So this will reduce the entire exercise to a judicial joke, so to say. So I think this is all I have to say. Now, I think this, through Letters, needs a voice. This discussion will, with all the views of all esteemed listeners and honorable judges who are taking part, we will have viewpoints. So let us analyze and see where we are. Over to you, sir. Ramkumar, sir.
Directly over to you, Ramkumar, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Malhotra ji.
I have pricked him.
I refuse to be pricked. Excellent articulation as usual from Malhotra ji. Is not the amending act challenged in the Supreme Court? You must be in the forefront.
Sir, it is only on 24th of July.
Yes.
It has gone to Rajya Sabha. It has yet to receive the assent of the president.
Oh, I see.
So one day,
Yet to become law. Yet to become law.
One day somebody will ring up and the president will say, please tell me how many pages I have to sign in there.
You're absolutely right.
It is like one of the presidents who was in his bathtub and a man comes and says, sir, you have to sign these ordinances. He says, just bring a pen, let me know where all to sign.
Yes. So
it will not stand the test. But I think the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights should have come in. Now, whether the chief will come in or not because he is an appointee of the government, I don't know. But I never thought this would go through. And most of the bills which have gone through in the last week of July have gone through undiscussed. So I don't know whether it was referred to a select committee also. It remains to be seen. But it is a major. It is going to do a lot of.
yes, correct. In fact, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. So a conscious attempt to bureaucratize the adjudicating fora in the statutes and under the jaundiced alibi that the civil court has failed to deliver quick justice. It's all wrong. You are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And even the appeal provider is from Caesar to Caesar, as you rightly highlighted.
So, sir, what will happen? The stenographer or the private secretary or assistant will write the order and the commissioner will sign it.
Yes, as any other.
And with the help of the computer, They will start copy pasting 2 or 3 orders and make a new order.
As any other administrative order. Now, the all the basic statutes, as you rightly highlighted, have been reduced to have been mutilated and virtually defiled by this amendment.
Sir, I think they did a blunder by not touching the definition of the word court. They are keeping the powers of the court to issue orders of adoption and guardianship intact. But you are reducing in the substantive parts.
Yes.
You are equating a district magistrate. Actually, you are equating, and you are actually easing the court out and putting the district magistrate in.
They are no equals. They are no equals at all.
A basic violation of the principle of separation of powers, Article 50.
Correct. And hereafter, adoption under HAMA and JJ Act brings about a discrimination, violating Article 14, as you rightly.
Article 21, right to life.
That also. 21 of the CRC as well as Constitution of India, both.
Both. And we are falling foul of the international conventions. No country, I don't think any country has an administrative process to approve an adoption. I remember seeing this 5 years ago when I was called to the Judicial Academy in Bhopal, where Justice Raghu Ram had initiated a discussion, and the Secretary of Women and Child Development had come armed with the CEO of Kara, who was an army officer, and they had called 100 family court judges to explain to them. They made out a graph and saying you have delay. So I told the chairman, I said, is this an administrative meeting? Are they reviewing their ACRs? They said, no, you are delaying it. You need to expedite it. So a mechanism was set up, but I think in a zest and zeal to fasten the process of adoption, they have entered into this exercise, but they don't realize the damage it is going to result in. We have gone back to the abuse provision, which the Supreme Court plugged. Ultimately, somebody will challenge it. Some NGO should take it up. It should.
Anyway, you will be in the forefront. We have no hesitation, and you are fully charged for the fight.
I have been amicus. I have been a court-appointed counsel to inspect homes. I have seen the worst of abuse, and the streamlining of this act has been something which I've been consciously watching for the past 25 years. So it doesn't make sense. And sir, another thing, what will you do to the definition of the word court in POCSO, where similar issues are involved? What are you going to do? And what is the purpose? And very soon you will see that district magistrates, sir, first of all, has a district magistrate got a time? And a child is not a license, permit, or a quota.
Not a
human being.
Correct. Not a chattel to be transferred or to be sold or to be done whatever he likes. Anyway, yeah, wonderful articulation, sir. You are fully armed and equipped for the fight in the Supreme Court. Sir, we are sure.
Sir, I was told by a judge, you don't need another spine. So I have another spine.
Correct.
Straightened spine now.
Yes, not even otherwise it was straight.
No, not that. Further straightened because it won't bend. It won't bend.
You have this character in the movies called Wolverine. And you find all those things coming out, metal things coming out.
Correct.
I don't know what has happened, but I read about it and I felt very strongly. I wrote a piece, it came out, and it was just published in Lawyer's Update. So I told Sham, and Sham was ignited immediately. So he said it has to be rooted judicially through Justice Ram Kumar.
Let us wait for the rubber stamp to come and then start our fight.
So that is why I said you are putting the cart before the horse.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Pre-posters, really pre-posters. Correct. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Ramkumar sir. May I move on to Justice Ramkrishnan sir, please?
Yes, sir.
Really, it's a good articulation on a subject which is yet to come, to see the light, you can say, because we are on a reposed talk on subject one. Secondly,
Unfortunately, we cannot do any feticide. Commit any feticide.
see, it is high time that the president also should apply his mind. And when such this comes and when there is contradictions are there in respect of the definition of court in similar enactments, which will have a impact. I think it is high time for the top of the executive also must be in tune with this thing, especially when I think president is a lawyer. Also.
So what? He's a tool of the cabinet.
But the whole another difficulty is, and nowadays none of the laws are being properly debated. Whenever issues are raised where things will have to be done in a legislative manner, according to the known process of legislation, none of the laws are being sent to select committee at all. Even if it goes to the select committee, we do not know whether it is being properly discussed and come with any required proposal for amendment or something like that in the proposed act. Then also it may have some impact. Those things are not happening. Difficulty. I do not know what will happen. And also, you have rightly said, when parallel enactments are there and courts are being defined, and without amending the definition of court in the JJ Act, providing the powers of the court to a person who is not a court to decide an issue is a big question mark. Really, that is one thing. Because wherever if you see, when the legislation thought where the intervention of court is required, they were very conscious about the separation of powers and they were providing only to judicial courts, not to executive courts. First time that came is only in the Senior Citizen Act. Senior Citizen Act also, earlier it appears there was a move to provide it to the family court or something like that. But subsequently it has been changed. Because the same thing was sent, the quick disposal, early summary way of remedy, summary remedy to provide speedy justice. These are all the slogans for the purpose of providing. But ultimately, if you go by the provisions also, and none of the executive courts are also doing it within the time frame that has been provided under the so-called act. That is not also happening. And as you rightly said, see, because we in the judicial field we are seeing the number of 133 orders passed, number of 106 orders passed by the executive magistrates being criticized by the High Court and the Supreme Court and sending back with a lot of the training program. We can say training module as how this will not be exercised. In spite of that, the same thing repeats. That is how things are going on when it comes to the executive being vested with the power of judicial decision-making aspects. Really, it's a good articulation. I think that as regards the NGOs are also concerned, most of the NGOs are welcoming this because most of them are making it as a business now. Only a few NGOs which are having some interest in protecting children alone may able to come up with such repetitions. Otherwise, most of them are only tools for the purpose of providing or facilitating adoption more easier methods. That is what happening also. And I do not know whether the National Child Commission will not come with some idea on this.
Sir, the chairperson is an appointee of the government. So it's a sad story. Had you had a judge, he would intervene. But now with the chairperson being a political man, things will be different. And another thing I find, all select committees are full of MPs who all keep quiet. So you will have a bevy of government officers sitting next to them taking notes and just formal hearings and everything else will be decided. Another thing which I noticed, in the bill which is circulated, they provide the extracts of the provisions which are being amended. I found that in this case, they should have given the definition of the word court in parallel amendments. So in the circulating bill, because I saw the complete bill, the pages which flow under, we give limited information. So a person who, even if there is an enlightened MP like Shashi Tharoor or Kapil Sibal, he will not come to know what is going on. So if there was a parallel description of
Reference, yes.
Parallel reference, right word, in the enactments, other enactments to similar word used in the context of adoption, one would decipher. So therefore, it is a conscious intention to mislead and pass laws which you want to be made as laws.
And at least a nominated former Chief Justice of India is there in Supreme Court.
He's meant to safeguard your interest. So he says that is why he went there.
Yes.
I do not know. Yes. Probably when he was selected, it appears to provide a seat for judicial propriety or judicial intervention in legislation. Probably that may be the intention, but I do not know how far it has succeeded.
Mhm.
You're still
To provide him a berth.
now today the Supreme Court is saying we are not protected. Nobody bothers. So if you are gunned down in the street, then you realize you are at risk. But you see a bureaucrat or a police officer going, one escort, one pilot, 12
Yes,
people here,
yes.
14 people there. Look at the fate otherwise. So, Sham, any other views?
We have Dr. Justice Meena V. Gombar. Could you please offer your comments? If you can unmute. Some technical issues, I believe.
I remember Mr. Nariman, Fali Nariman, arguing a case before a judge of the Kerala High Court, former judge. I don't mention the name. After hearing, sometimes the judge asked the senior counsel, now, Mr. Nariman, is there any law for protection of judges? Immediately came the answer.
Slight amendment.
Yes, my lord. There is a protection of cruelty to animals. Prevention of cruelty to animals.
Before I go to KVJ Rao sir, let us celebrate today because it's a golden moment.
Golden day for India.
We have won the gold medal in the Tokyo Olympics. Neeraj Gupta has won the gold in
javelin throw. And that is the first athletic item where India got the medal.
It's in fact a proud moment for us. I mean, let us celebrate it for a second. Wonderful.
And that also javelin, which is a sport alien to India.
Correct.
Absolutely.
It is a European game. I would have understood hockey or cricket or
no, hockey also after 41 years we got at least bronze now. Because originally India and Pakistan were the champions for hockey in Olympics.
Sir, I have a small
doubt. Get out from Advocate Radhakrishnan. Yeah,
yes. The similar situation is in Sarfasi Act. Sir. Sarfasi, they are the chief metropolitan magistrate or district magistrate.
Oh.
District magistrate is collector. So Sarfasi can be moved before the district collector.
But does anybody?
And another aspect, in National Highway Act, Right to Fair Compensation Act, the collector is the arbitrator.
No, that is because the award is being
that is at the cutting edge. At the cutting edge.
No, they
at the lowest strata. Lowest strata.
Yes, they themselves is deciding, and collector is becoming the arbitrator. And
who is the appellate forum? What about the appellate forum?
No, first forum is arbitrator. How can a collector can be an arbitrator if the lower authority is deciding compensation?
Judge of his own cause.
One aspect, just like Justice Ramkumar sir said, the executization or what you call like a bureaucratization of
and appeal from Caesar to Caesar.
It is much more evident in another act also. I mean, Common Man's Enactment, which I've been often repeating. The Consumer Protection Act, earlier it ought to have been a district judge or a high court judge in the act to be the presiding member. Now that has been removed from the act, but it is still retained the rules. For how long? God alone knows.
One more question, sir.
Let me point out another act to you. which I assisted as an amicus, whose judgment I passed out in Zubair Ahmed, the Central Reserve Police Forces Act of 1949. It is still on the statute. It was set aside, but the judgment was stayed. Now, sir, in CRPF Act 1949, the commandant is the prosecutor. The commandant is the punishing authority. The commandant is the authority to impose punishment under the act. The commandant is then also the disciplinary authority. The commandant is also then the dismissing.
One man show.
All rolled into one.
One man show.
So he has 4 hats. Depending on the time of the day, he can change his hats.
Hydra-headed.
So
Sir, what-
I just assisted Justice Rajiv Narayan Raina, who set it aside, saying the CRP has been amended and all this has taken place. But I remember the Solicitor General came and he got it stayed. CRPF Act 1949 still is like this. Army Act, Navy Act, Air Force Act have all changed. But this is a pre-constitutional law, which makes men of the CRPF vulnerable. So if the commandant is drunk,
Yes.
he can sack you. If the
Villain.
commandant is sober, he can reinstate you.
Hire and fire. Villain pleasure.
Dismiss you.
Sir, one more question, sir. Regarding National Trust Act, what is it?
National which act?
National Trust Act.
National Trust Act. I don't have knowledge of that. Where is Mr.
Where the collector is the deciding authority, or the district magistrate is the deciding authority.
The lowest level, it is okay. But there should be an appeal to the judicial forum, is it not?
Judicial review should be provided.
A judicial review is a mandate. It is an
Mandate.
essential ingredient of concomitant of justice.
Exactly. Even where the appeal is statutorily barred, 226 will always apply, is it not?
Absolutely.
No, in one of the decisions, Chandrasekhar versus Union of India, I think the Supreme Court has heavily came on taking away the constitutional court's power to intervene. Just straight away going to some other courts
This
without
is what detribunalization is all about.
Tribunalization, the curse and the scourge.
But they are only increasing the workload. So initially, a tribunal, an order was appealable straight
to the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Then they said nothing doing. This is all rubbish. What is coming is nonsense.
Chandra Kumar, yes.
So L. Chandra Kumar. Because an administrative member sitting in I don't think an administrative member is required because he still thinks he's a bureaucrat. Because he will turn around and say, oh, this is a matter for the pay commission. What are you there for? So unless you have an enlightened judicial member, there's no point. And no offense meant, if there is a district judge who is an administrative member, then double murder sometimes. Comprehension to decipher justice is gone. What is Article 14? What is Article 16? Beyond comprehension. So this is a sad state. What to do?
Even the Supreme Court has said in National Green Tribunal when it was struck down that 17 rules, 2017 rules, going to different type of tribunals. Consolidation of all tribunals together with the different subjects, and then providing an appellate jurisdiction to the another provision. Then again come to the High Court and then to the Supreme Court. Several tiers.
All this could be amalgamated into the centralized judicial system so that at least we'll have more district judges and I don't know. Anyway, as we come to the end of the 232nd session, it has been a wonderful evening, and for the concluding remarks, may I request Rao sir.
Sir, as usual, Malhotra sir, excellent articulation.
Thank you.
And like I said, always, I don't know why they don't consult you before doing anything, being so well versed. So what actually this amendment will do will bring in the practice of not approved to note approved once the notes change hand.
Not a note.
True, exactly. So
just add an E.
Once the e-money comes in, the E will appear on the note and it will be approved.
And money makes the mayor go.
And with regarding to His Excellency the President, Sir, again, Shyam sir will be upset with me, but his brother-in-law is a good friend of ours. He was a union leader in Air India. When he became the president, he told us he's a fantastic man. Everything will happen by the book. Unfortunately, sir, he does not have much say otherwise also, because there is a quid pro quo. His daughter was flying as an air hostess with us, and when he became the president, she had two options because of security reasons: either take up a ground job or take leave. So she chose to take up the ground job. Now, president's daughter, junior most in line, has now become an AGM level officer and been provided a 1,000 square foot cabin with all the paraphernalia. So I don't think he would be doing much. And honestly speaking, as you also agreed, I mean, first thing is, sir, the judiciary also has let itself down, which we need to understand. Where if quick decisions were made by the judiciary, there would be no excuse. I understand that there are so many cases and stuff like that. Like now, I'll give you a simple example. You file 156(3) application, automatically converted to 202, whether there is a merit or no merit. So the court is taking on burden that it need not take on. And that is also causing a delay in so many other issues. So it also remains to be seen that the judiciary also needs to correct itself, sir, where proper steps have to be taken. Because I am fighting the system from outside, and today I am seeing what is happening within. I mean, imagine that I argued a case day before yesterday where the magistrate told me I never knew these judgments existed.
Wonderful.
I mean, he doesn't know that the constitutional bench Mata Jog Dobe existed.
So occupational ignorance and occupational lethargy.
And hazard also, sir. I am more concerned with the hazard.
And he should have been diplomatic. He should have said, I have read this, but let me have a look at it again.
No, in fact,
Just like saying, I ask myself this question.
like he in fact asked me, "Are you a law graduate?" I said, "Sir, no. I was kicked around, so I had to learn the ropes, and I've learned the ropes."
So you should have asked him, have you passed your exam?
Sir, I would be in contempt.
Which university are you from? Product of which university?
I would be hauled up for contempt. Anyway, coming back, sir, the executive is taking away every role of the country today.
And the judiciary is becoming a mute spectator or a willing participant to that.
True.
Pro quo, as you said.
I agree with you, Shyam sir. And I've seen it firsthand. Can you imagine I'm arguing 3 matters against a police officer, and that police officer is in the chamber of the magistrate before my argument starts?
Unholy alliance. Unholy alliance.
Unholy alliance. And till today, 7 months, he has not passed the order. It is in violation of Anil Rai versus State of Bihar.
You are being shown that justice is being undone.
True. I've seen, so, sir, I'll be very honest with you, sir. Like coming to this forum, I have learned a lot of things. It has helped me argue my matters. It has helped me take my cases further, because I sit with stalwarts like you. I listen to you. I assimilate what you are saying. But the fact remains is the person who actually has to hear you is not listening to you. And that is the bureaucracy. That is the parliament. Now, like you said, if the Supreme Court says that they are they can't do anything, they are not protected, then where do you imagine a judge being murdered in broad daylight? Call it an accident, call it whatever. There's a death of a judicial officer. And it can't be coincidental, because the questions asked were, where were his gunmen?
And an auto rickshaw.
True.
They were being apprehended with a clear film. It's not that they ran away.
Ran away. Exactly, sir.
I mean,
So
they were waiting to be apprehended.
Yes.
You are forgetting that this is a country where the Prime Minister gets shot by her own security men.
Sir, that was, see, sir, there you have to give them that concession. They were, this is not a thing to question is their holy temple was, demolished. So that angst must have been there. But in general, today, no citizen, if a judge is not safe, what is the safety of me, sir? You will not believe it. Yesterday, when I left court, there were lawyers who told me, sir, you better be careful. You have become notorious in this court. And when I argued vehemently yesterday, where he didn't want to listen to me in the morning at 11:30, he says, okay, I'll hear you at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Only to cut you short.
No, but he heard me. He heard me at length at 5 o'clock, sir. But I had to I then called up my colleagues and said, kindly come, because at 5 o'clock, the court is going to be empty.
Oh,
So I cannot take my chance. And they asked me, why, who are they? I said, no, they are my colleagues. They are also party to this. So they know what they want. So they have to be here. So like I said, Anil Malhotra, sir, the fact remains is that we are letting ourselves down and letting the encroachers, like it started with the camel and the Arab game. And today the camel is in the tent. And it is going to be very difficult to push the camel back out of the tent. So I thank you once again. I thank this platform. And like I said, anything like you want me to come and sign some petition, I am willing, I'm available. I will help for whatever good cause that you all want to do. I have no objections. Shamsher, like you said, Shamsher has already been, what should I say, charged and raring to go. So I don't mind being a party. And I thank you once again, sir. Thank you, everybody, for this patient session that we had. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Rao sir. And in fact, Anil sir.
Senior Citizens Act next on the cards.
Sorry, sir?
Senior Citizens Act next on the cards.
Oh, okay.
And for that matter, tomorrow in the 233rd session, we'll have the third part of the execution proceedings by Justice K.T. Shankaran, sir, attachment and sale of immovable property. So let us start with, I'd like to first of all thank Justice Mohammad Mushraq, sir, for having introduced in the first place Anil Malhotra, sir, into our family. And now Malhotra, sir, is part of the family. And thank you, sir, for this wonderful session. And in fact, it is a warning that if you sleep over things, they might, there is no point in now crying or wailing out thereafter. At least when the law is being made, if the persons who are in charge are not taking care of it, at least other persons should point out and be able to do something constructive and proactive so that legislations are done properly and responsibly. And there are no collateral damages for lawmaking, at least. So thank you, sir, very much. And thank you, Justice Ramkumar, sir, Justice Ramakrishnan, sir, and all of you wonderful participants for being part of this 232nd session. And till we meet again tomorrow, 10:30 for execution. Please do take care.
Execution, discharge and satisfaction.
Absolutely. And let us once again be proud that India has won the gold medal in the Tokyo Olympics. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.